Changhua. The headline in the newspaper announced the death of Alfred Nobel on April 13, 1888. The reporter called him a salesman of death. That sounds great, huh? A salesman of death. The dynamite king, because he invented this powerful explosive. In fact, Alfred Nobel's dynamite business had made him a very rich man. The newspaper story continued, giving Alfred Nobel's age, nationality, and other information about his business. However, the words "the dynamite king" were all that the 55-year-old Swedish man read. Oops, he is Swedish. I always think he's Norwegian. Nobel, Norwegian, it sounds the same. Anyway, that doesn't sound very nice, huh? The dynamite king, the salesman of death. So think about that. He's reading a newspaper about his own death. Does that make sense? No. Alfred Nobel sadly put down the newspaper. No, he wasn't dead. His brother Ludwig had died the day before, and the French newspaper had made a mistake. All the same, that means kind of like, whatever, doesn't matter. Alfred Nobel was disturbed, upset, not happy about that, obviously. Was this the way the world was going to remember him? He did not like that idea at all. He had spent his life working for peace in the world. He hated violence and war. He had invented dynamite to save lives, lives that were lost because other explosives were dangerous to use. He wanted people to remember him as a man of peace. So he was famous for dynamite, but people, that had many good uses, positive uses, but people only thought of the negative, like, just used for war and blowing up people and things. Next, line 16. Alfred Nobel invented dynamite at a perfect moment in time. Many countries were beginning to build railroads and tunnels and needed a safe, powerful explosive to construct railroad tracks through mountains. People also needed dynamite to blow up stone in order to construct buildings, dams, and roads. Alfred Nobel invented dynamite for these peaceful purposes. Moreover, that means like also, and, moreover, he believed that if all countries had the same powerful weapons, they would see how impossible war was, and wars would end. In fact, this was a popular idea of his day. So that is called, during the Cold War, that was called mutually assured destruction. I'll send you some notes on our classroom about this chapter, some notes, but it's called MAD. It's the same idea, mutually both assured, means guaranteed destruction. Just like now with nuclear weapons. That's why North Korea has nuclear weapons, right? You shoot me, I shoot you, we both die. It's mutually assured. So even the same idea way back then with dynamite. If all the countries have enough dynamite, then they're afraid they're not going to use it because they're afraid they will also be attacked. So at that time also, it was 1860s, 50s, the middle of the 19th century. It says lots of building was going on all over the world. Railroads, especially tunnels. This is before cars, so mostly for railroads and other transportation. But that's how the first Chinese came to the USA in the 1860s and 70s. They built a lot of they did a lot of gold mining in California because they were good at doing that already back in China, and China had a lot of trouble internally, so a lot of them came to the USA. That's why there's Chinese that have been in the USA for generations. So before that, there weren't any Chinese, I don't think, or very, very, very few. And of course, there was lots of racial discrimination about that. So after the Chinese came, they did all the work, and then they were not treated well. They had to live in the bad part of towns. And then they made laws where the Chinese couldn't stay afterwards. So America, huh? Great country. America has a lot of sins to atone for. All right, so now we're on line 24. Nobel was very upset about the image that the world had of him, but He did not know what to do about it. He thought about this problem for years. That's why the picture on the first page. What should I do? What should I do? He thought about it for years. He hated that the world thought of him that way. He wanted to think of the best way for people to use his fortune of $9 million after his death. So that's how you say that. You say 9 million and then dollars. Shipman won. It's the same thing. Then in 1895, so he brother died in 1888, so about 7 years later, he read, an adventurer named Solomon August Andre made plans for an expedition to reach the North Pole. So an expedition is like a really long, hard trip. Next, people all over the world were excited about Andre's journey. So back then, explorers, they were like the real like Elon Musks of the world, or the Steve Jobs, or they were like the most famous guys, and people really envied them because that was a time of exploration in the world, and the first one to get to the North Pole. He didn't say where he's going. I think that's where he's going. Yeah, North Pole, right? Who can get to the top of the mountain first? All those things. Who can be first? And people would read in the newspapers. That was the main form of information, and they would follow them. And they were heroes. People like Andre and Livingston. Another guy named Shackleton, you may have heard of. He's his story. I'll put a link to his story. Shackleton. He basically went to the South Pole, Antarctica. He's trying to get to the South Pole, but they had some problems, and it's dark in the winter, no sun, and they said they had to take their boat. It got stuck in the ice. I think they had to go by land for 3 or 4 months in total darkness, not knowing where they're going really, but just trying to go and to find safety, and you can't imagine. Just today that would be unimaginable with no navigation, etc., etc. All right. So back to line 29. Nobel read about Andre's plan too, and had an inspiration. I'm inspired. He did something, so I want to do something. An inspiration. He finally knew what to do with his fortune. He wrote his last will and testament. So if you look at the footnote, it says last will and testament, a legal paper that states how a person wishes his or her possessions to be distributed after his or her death. So basically it says, you've seen this in movies where they come in and they're all waiting, the family lawyer's reading the paper of the deceased, the dead person's wishes. So my son will get my apartment, my daughter will get my business, blah, blah, blah. So that's a will. It's just called a will. A last will and testament, but people just say will. But you see, it's capitalized. It's a big W. That means it's a special thing. It's not just the verb of the future tense. So in his will. So next, line 31. In his will, he instructed people to use all of his money for an annual award as an honor to leaders of science, literature, and world peace. He stated that these leaders could be men or women of any nationality, from anywhere, any country in the world could get this. So then Alfred Nobel, he died only a year later. He died on December 10, 1896. So it says on because that's the day. He died on December 10th. So on, but if it's just the month, he died in December, right? So in that period of time, but he died on that specific point in time, on the day, on December 10th, at the age of 63. Back then, 63 was old, right? Because, it's a little, many babies died very, very young, so that made the average age kind of wasn't quite as accurate. So a lot of people did live to be, 60, 70, but because there's so many babies died at birth, that it makes the statistics make them look like the average age was only about 40 or 50 or so. So he was a Chongak. He was unmarried and had no children. People all over the world wondered Who was going to get Nobel's money? So he had no family, no immediate family, we say. There's the extended family, but your immediate family is your brother, sister, mother, father. They were amazed when they learned of Alfred Nobel's plan to award annual prizes in the fields of physics, chemistry, medicine, literature, and peace. So in the field means category, right? But when they say, like they talk the field of medicine, I'm in internal medicine, orthopedic medicine. Also, it's a way to say what category of work do you do? Like I'm in the education field, and I was in the travel field, you could say. Next, line 39. The first Nobel Prizes were awarded in 1901. So that's the best way to say that, right? 1901, 19,001, 1901, 1909, 1969. And they very soon became the greatest honor that a person could receive in these fields. So there was nothing like this really, and so soon he became famous. He was already famous, and he made these prizes with the money. So it was already like from the first moment, it was already like, wow, everyone is watching and was really amazed by this. Line 39. And they very soon became the greatest honor that a person could receive in these fields. In 1969, an award for economics was added. So there's 6. I think there's more now, as you'll see when you do your homework, but there's an alternative Nobel Peace Prize as well. But those are the big 6. The original, 5 original categories, and then later they added economics. Next, the report of Alfred Nobel's death had been a mistake, but the decision that he made because of this error, same thing, gave the world the image he wanted. Alfred Nobel established the Nobel Prize, and the world thinks of him the way he wanted to be remembered. Alfred Nobel, man of peace. All right, so let's look at the next page, 116. The main idea is A, B, or C. Part 1, it is C. He was a peaceful man who gave the world a great prize. So that's the most general statement. And in Part 2, scan the passages, work with a partner. In this case, the partner is yourself. You could say there's 3 of us, me, myself, and I. So the accomplishment. An achievement and accomplishment is the same thing. An achievement or an accomplishment. So the accomplishment was he invented dynamite. The reason was to save lives because other explosives were too dangerous to use. So he did it for peaceful purposes. And the result, it made him rich and famous. So one more time, the reason was to save lives because other explosives were too dangerous to use. And the result made him rich and famous. The next is he established the Nobel Prize. The reason, he was upset because of his global image after his brother died, and he thought it would be the best way for people to use his fortune. So upset about his global image and the best way for people to use his fortune. And the result, people were impressed or amazed by his idea, and now they remember him as a man of peace. He's quite famous, right? We're talking about him in a class in Korea, halfway around the world. Okie dokie. So next page, the reading analysis. 1A, what does however mean? Hajiman. But. So B, complete the sentences, or the sentence. Robert wanted to go to the beach, however, it rained. No, but it rained, so he stayed home. So that's number 1. C, the words Dynamite King were all that the 55-year-old Swedish man read. What does this mean? That means that's all he read. Those 3 words were the only words he read. So number 2 is the answer. And then 2, the French newspaper made a mistake about Nobel. Ludwig Nobel died, not Alfred Nobel. All the same, Alfred Nobel was disturbed. What do these sentences mean? B, right? Didn't matter that the news was a mistake. Alfred was still upset. So that's what all the same means, regardless. Whatever, he was still upset. Alfred was alive, his brother was dead, but he was still upset that everyone thought he died and everyone thought that he was the dynamite king. Next, number 3. The world is going to remember him as the dynamite king. Alfred Nobel did not like that idea at all. This sentence means that C, anything. He didn't like anything about it at all means 0, right? So he did not like anything about the idea. Turn the page. 4, Nobel invented dynamite to save lives. Lives that were lost because other explosives were dangerous to use. So what follows the dash? In that sentence, it's an explanation, right? Just like when you look in a dictionary, there's a dash and then definition. Number 5, like I said, moreover means and or in addition. And is the same thing. Mostly, you don't hear people say that speaking. Like I never use that word moreover when I'm speaking. Just, it's not commonly spoken, but written English, yes. B. So it says Robert needed to learn English because he wanted to go to college in the U.S. Moreover, so in addition, he had to speak English to get a good job, number 1. And next, his day refers to the time that he lived. So that's a very common expression these days. We say, back in the day, or back in my day. That just means at a time in the past, like kind of talking about your prime time, but just kind of how things were, when I was your age, when I was growing up, when I was in college, when I was playing basketball, whatever, back in the day. Like for you basketball fans, back in the day, the way Allen Iverson dribbles, or now everyone does it. They dribble and they put their hand under the ball and then they make a quick decision. Back in the day, back in my day, you couldn't do that. That's called palming. You palm your hands. That's like traveling. That's palming, right? It's very, very rarely called. But these days, everyone does it. But back in the day, that was not allowed. All right. And number 6, Nobel wanted to think of the best way for people to use his fortune. So a synonym of fortune is wealth, right? A lot of money, a giant amount of money. That's why you're in university, to try to make a fortune, perhaps. 7, in 1895, Alfred Nobel wrote his last will and testament. In his will, he instructed people to look or to use all of his money for an annual award. So what's a last will and testament? It's in the footnote there. It's a legal document that describes how a person's wealth and possessions should be divided up or distributed. Or basically, who gets what? That's an easy way to say it. Who gets what? How do you know? Duh. It's in the book. From the footnote, right? And that's what C is. Footnote is the information at the bottom of a page. 8 is talking about fields. So it's a subject area. It could be a job occupation too. So 2 and 1. What is your field? I mean education field. It's not only for academic subjects. It's probably more commonly used for academic subjects like literature, economics, but also it is used for talking about occupations sometimes. Examples: science, medicine, law, education. And last one, 9. What's a synonym of mistake? Error. Error. Sounds like air. You breathe air. Air, error. 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 I made an error. Error. Air. Error. A lot of sounds. All right. And turning the page. Dictionary skills. So popectu, number one. Popectu. So the answer, you can just circle the answer. Number one is the definition, the best possible. And then for the first example sentence, perfect A is an adjective. It's definition number one, and it's an adjective here. And B, it's sentence number three. Nobel invented dynamite at the best possible moment, at the perfect moment in time. To disturb means to worry or upset someone. So A, it's disturb is definition 2, and it's a verb. And then B, it's number 1. The newspaper article that described Alfred Nobel as the dynamite king upset him or disturbed him. 3, award. It's the noun. It's a prize. So it's the same thing as a prize. It's a noun. And its definition, and B is number 2, an annual prize. And then honor. So honor is the verb, and T means transitive. It doesn't matter, but down here, it means to praise, to give recognition to. She was honored with the mayor. So it's it's a verb, A, and B, it's sentence number 2. Nobel instructed people to use all of this money for an annual award to give recognition to leaders of science, literature, and world peace. That's what we need these days, lots of world peace. But Kim Jong-un, he was crying. It was actually on my birthday. 10/10 is my birthday. He was actually crying, right, when he gave the speech. Are those real tears, right? Or are those what we call crocodile tears? Means he was just pretending. They're not sincere. Huh? I don't know. Maybe he's a good actor. Who knows? But it's very unusual for a North Korean leader to admit mistakes like that, right? I mean, his father and his grandfather, they were almost seen as gods, and now he's like crying and saying, I'm sorry, things are tough and I'm trying, but it's having a hard time. But at least he said he made some peaceful words to South Korea, to us, so that's good. He seems more sane than Donald Trump, right? All right, now we're on doing the word forms, page 122. So part 1, in English, some verbs become nouns by adding ion or ation, like suggest becomes suggestion. And the examples here: instruct, invent, construct, inspiration, continuation. And then part 2, also verbs to nouns, but adding ment on them. Improve becomes improvement. Announce, announcement. State, statement. So I'll read through the answers, and you have to write. Have to be in the simple tense. Sorry, simple past tense. Could be positive or negative, and the nouns could be singular or plural. So here we go. The teacher instructed the students to write their composition in pen, to skip a line, and to put their names on the paper. The students followed her instructions carefully. So it's instructed, simple past tense, and instructions, her instructions. Because they're more than one, right? It's going to be plural. And it's funny, a composition, that's a lost subject about how to write it in what's called longhand. You know, there's printing, and then there's cursive or longhand, where all the letters are connected, and nobody will have to write that way in the future. So it's a lost art. My mother, she loves anyone who has good penmanship, it's called. But my son and my nephews, she always complains about their penmanship. Oh, look at that! Who can read that? Like, Mom, it doesn't matter. Everyone using texting these days, electronic. Okay, number 2, Thomas Edison, an American, invented more than 1,000 Useful items. His inventions were include the light bulb, sound movies, and the phonograph or record player. Another ancient thing. So invented and inventions, plural. 3. The company finished construction of their new office building. Or the construction. So it's going to be the noun. The construction. And it's the negative here. The company didn't construct the building of steel. They built it with bricks and wood instead. So it's the negative form. 4. When the general gave a speech to his soldiers, he inspired them to action. Just like Nobel was inspired by the French explorer André. As a result of the general's inspiration, the soldier won the difficult battle. And number 5. When Jenny graduated from high school, she didn't continue her education immediately. She went to college several years later. The continuation of her education had to wait until she saved enough money. So that's number 3 and number 5 are the negative form. She didn't continue her education. And then part 2, it's the same where you have to add meant, and then verbs are simple past tense and could be positive or negative, could be nouns, could be singular or plural. So 1, Carol and Simon announced their engagement yesterday. They plan to get married in 2 months. Their happy announcement surprised their friends. Lloyd went to a baseball game yesterday, but the game didn't excite him at all. He prefers to watch soccer games. However, I enjoy watching baseball games. I think there is a lot of excitement in baseball. I don't. Oh. They say now, in America at least, baseball is losing a lot of popularity, especially among young people, because it's not enough movement. Like there's the average, on the average, like there's 3 minutes and something seconds between things that happen. Because there's pitchers, he throws a ball and he gets it and comes back, rubs the ball, and the batter steps out, blah, 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 foul ball, blah, blah. So nothing happens for about 3 minutes and some seconds on average. And so the language here is very awkward, very unnatural. The game didn't excite me. What? No one says that. I didn't like the game. The game sucked. That's what people say. I think there's a lot of excitement in baseball. Okay, Grandpa. 3, the magician was very talented, and he amazed the children with his wonderful tricks. He smiled at their look of amazement when he pulled a rabbit from his hat. And number 4, the governor made a few statements. So few, it's going to be more than one. Last night, in his speech, he stated that he planned to run for re-election next year, and he also planned to cut taxes. And 5, the board of directors discussed the formal establishment of a law school at the university 10 years ago. However, they didn't establish the law school until this year. So negative, right? They talked about it 10 years ago, but it was not established until this year. They didn't establish the law school until this year. The law school here is 2 floors above me in beautiful Ardong, Mapoku, Walsan Road, 72-1. I know it well. Okay, so now there's vocabulary here. So number 1 is Jisoo is going into the field of medicine. She wants to become a doctor. A doctor of what? Right? Internal medicine. Blah, blah, blah. 2, David wants to take a vacation to Hawaii. However, he doesn't have enough money now, so he's going to wait until next year. Poor David. 3, the art in Sophie's home is worth a fortune. It's a common expression. Oh, that must be worth a fortune. It's worth a fortune. It means it's just very expensive. Her family owns several paintings by very famous artists. Each painting is worth over $1 million. Beck Mandala. Magicians always amaze people with their tricks. They can make a rabbit disappear or cut a woman in half. 5. I made a mistake on my paper. I wrote he do instead of he does. 6. Never disturb Susan when she is studying. She needs to concentrate on her books. 7. We were cold and tired from our long walk. All the same, when we came home, we decided to go to the movies after dinner. So again, all the same means but it doesn't matter. It didn't matter. We were tired, but still, we went out to the movies and dinner. So all the same. But again, that's not really commonly spoken. You'll see it in written English, but not when people moshi moshi, speak. The university surprised a graduating student with a special honor for her volunteer work with young children during her summer vacations. All right, next page. Think about it. Why, number 1, why did they call him a salesman of death? Right, because he had a bad reputation. Bad image or bad reputation, a bad rep. Yeah, people thought he was the salesman of death, the merchant of death, Mr. Death, Mr. Dynamite. Also weird that, imagine that, you're reading the newspaper about your own death. And that's called an obituary. Basically, when people who are well known, when they die, there's like a write-up about their life and their history, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a whole department. If you're working in a newspaper, you just work in the obituary section, and you're just always doing research. You're prepared, right? All these people who are famous, if they die tomorrow, they can go right to their file and have all their most of their life story, and they just finish the story and print it in the paper, in the obituary section. I don't know if you have that in Korea. I don't know, but in America, like a lot of papers, they'll have, especially the Sunday paper, they'll have like the weddings announcements. People announce their weddings. There'll be a picture of the bride and groom and just describing who they are, their background a little bit. And then also there's an obituary section for people who have passed away in the last week or so. Anyway, let's go to the next reading now on page 126. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, so it says choosing Nobel Prize winners. And there's the pensive Mr. Nobel once again. So it says, Alfred Nobel gave more than $9 million of his fortune to establish annual Nobel Prizes. According to Nobel's instructions, the money is given to people who help humankind in some outstanding way in 5 fields: physics, chemistry, physiology or medicine, that's the same thing, literature, and peace. In addition to the cash prize, each Nobel Prize receives a gold medal. The Nobel Foundation is the legal owner of the prize funds, but it does not award the prizes. The foundation follows a list of Alfred Nobel's rules. One of the rules states that not all the prizes must be given out each year. In fact, no Nobel Prizes were given out for the years 1940 to 1942. Why was that, you think, huh? Different groups give out each award. The Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences makes the Physics and Chemistry Awards. The Karolinska Institute of Stockholm, Sweden awards the Physiology or Medicine Prize. The Nobel Prize for Literature is awarded by the Swedish Academy. The Norwegian Parliament chooses a committee of 5 people to award the Nobel Peace Prize. In 1969, a 6th prize was established in economics. The Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences makes this award too. Each of these institutions must receive the names of candidates before February 1 of each year. February 1st, but here it's just February 1 of each year. A jury of 12 people decides on a final candidate by a majority vote. So a jury, I don't know if you have that in Korea. I think that's they're trying to change that system, but Like, let's say there's a murder trial, and they call it a jury by your peers. So what happens is they choose, like it's your duty. You get something in the mail and just randomly, and you're supposed to go in and serve on jury duty. So they might like send jury notices to 100 people or something, and they come in, they ask them questions, and like depending on people, there's so many factors. But a lot of people like they can't do it because they're too busy, or if they've heard about this case. It's weird. You see movies. It's all kinds of factors. I don't want to get into that. It's too complicated. But basically, they get down to 12, and both the prosecutor and the defender, both sides of the trial, they can have an opinion about I want this juror, I don't want this juror. So they both decide on a group of 12 people. So you have the judge and the jury and the prosecutor. That's like from the state or the government that says you're guilty, you did this crime. And then the defendant is the person who is accused of the crime. Not me, but someone who could go to jail or prison. Oh, by the way, so jail is short term and prison is long term, right? If that helps. So then there's a trial, and then the judge just listens to the lawyers, both sides, the two arguments. The judge says, basically controls the argument, basically. And the jury decides, right? They're the ones that have to make a decision. So you'll see in the movies where the jury, they finish hearing all the arguments after sometimes days or weeks. And then they go into a room, and they actually are not allowed to have contact with anybody in the outside world, right? It's a very secure location. It's like they have a virus or something. Because they don't not allowed to have phones, no contact, because they can't have any outside information. They can't read about what's going on in the press about the trial, because that would influence their thinking, their decision. So, but most cases are not like this. But there are, the big publicity cases, like if you've heard of O.J. Simpson. There was a Netflix series about this. That was a very big deal. That went on for months and months. It was on TV every day, and the whole country was waiting to hear the announcement. It was the thing. Anyway, so that's a jury. So in this case, the jury of 12 people, they vote on a final candidate, right? And it's by majority vote. So it could be by unanimous vote, which means like it has to be 12-0. It has to be everyone agrees. If it's 11 and agree, 1 disagree, they don't make a decision. It's called a hung jury. Nothing happens. Basically, it's been a waste of time. But a majority vote just means like it's 7 people is enough. 7-5 is majority vote. They win. If there is no majority vote for any one candidate, the prize is not offered that year. The jury reviews the candidates and asks them many questions, including the following. Did you make the outstanding contribution in the previous year? Was your contribution the result of many years of research? Did you work with 1, 2, or 3 scientists as a team? The prize may be divided. That happened this year. Did your discovery depend on the work of another candidate? Again, the prize may be divided. The first Nobel Prizes were awarded on December 10, 1901, which was the 5th anniversary of Alfred Nobel's death. The amount of each prize was more than $40,000 at that time, which was a lot of money. Today, each prize is worth more than $1 million. All right, and so the questions, true or false, each prize must be given out each year or every year. No, it's lines 19 and 20. If there's no majority vote, no winner, then they don't offer a prize. And then why do you think no prizes were given out from 1940 to 1942? Think about it. World War II. That's why. Just like there was no Olympics from 1940 and 1944. They skipped because of the war. What happens if the jury of 12 people cannot agree on one candidate? There's no majority, then no prize is offered. And number 4, skip. It's kind of silly. Okay, so this will be part of your homework too, is you have to pretend that you're wealthy. Pretend you have a fortune. And you have to basically not write a will, that's too morbid. Don't think about dying, but just what would you like to do with your money? So think of it as you're not dead, but you're alive. So let's say you're 40 or so. You've become successful, you made a lot of money, you don't have to work, but now you want to do something good with your money. You don't have any kids, or you have kids, but you hate your kids. They're spoiled. You don't like the Trump kids, right? They're pieces of crap. So you don't want to give them the money. So you want to do something for society, for the world at large. Maybe for your own reputation, your own image, like Nobel, right? You want people to remember you for what you did for humanity. So about half a page. What do you want to happen to your property and money after you die? So again, not after you die, just when think about maybe 20 years later, right? You're successful, you have lots of money. What do you want to do with that and the rest of your life? How would you want to, you would also enjoy that money and help other people with that money. Okay, so I'll write this up. This will be written down on Classroom, what the assignment is, but basically pretty simple. Okay, and then page 128, you can do that in the book on your own. Just go back and check your answers from the reading. Very easy. So that's it, and now you'll see me in class. Ciao, ciao.